Welcome to the Root of It All podcast with Tree, where you will learn new habits for human betterment. We talk about all things related to personal growth, and everything is on the table. Each episode will explore different topics like self-care, mindfulness, goal setting, and more, with a focus on practical tips and actionable advice you can start implementing in your life today. Our goal is to help you become the best version of yourself and live a more meaningful life. So grab a drink, cozy up, take your dog for a walk, or go for a drive. Join us for some fun and meaningful conversations with some amazing humans. Let's grow together.
Hello, everybody. This is Tree from the Root of It All podcast with Tree. And today it is truly an honor, and you'll understand this when you get to meet our next guest here, which is Heather McFall from Lake Hypnosis in Florida. And she also wrote a book that we're going to be talking about. And I have like some questions, and you guys are, I just can't wait for you guys to meet her. So the book is called A Dedicated Life. And I'm going to let Heather just sort of, so Heather McFall, thank you so much for your time today, for meeting with us. And so tell us how you got started into becoming a hypnotist and sort of ended up discovering all of these things that you then injected into this awesome book.
Well, thank you for having me. That was sweet. There's a lot of people go into change work, whether it's psychology or neuro-linguistics and hypnosis but behavior change. People that are attracted to it usually are trying to fix or change or reconcile something in themselves. And so my book, A Dedicated Life, an Empath's Journey, the first 2 or 3 chapters of it is an example of how my empath strategy was created. And it's really a trauma response. But it made me sort compulsively by other, because an empath is somebody who actually takes on the mood, emotions, or physicality of another person. Like sitting next to a stranger on a bus, I will start to have their heart attack symptoms if they're going through that. I've had other people's asthmatic responses but it's given me a lot of incredible insight, and it gives me compassion because I'm actually feeling what they're feeling. So it helped me and I didn't really know it was happening. I wasn't aware of it ever. It just felt like, and I wrote about it in the book and how it was developed. And becoming a hypnotist was the first time I found out, like I could separate it. When I went into mentorship with Scott McFall, because he observes people in a way that nobody alive actually does. There's nobody left still alive that does what Scott McFall does. And he was able to observe me from 1,200 miles away, like he's seeing me at conferences and conventions and speaking engagements. And he started noticing that I would take on the behavior and beliefs of the person who was in the greatest need in the room. Mm. And so he was the one that pointed it out to me. But it was incredibly beneficial in my office, because when I'd sit down in a free screening and ask them, like, how do you know you got what you came here for? You drove across town, you made the appointment, you waited, you scheduled the time to be here. So obviously you have a little skin in the game. How will you know that this worked? What would you see, hear, or feel? And when I would ask them that, and it's not even really intentional, I thought I was just really good at my job. But I would take on, so while they're telling me, because nobody really communicates in words fully what they're experiencing. So I'm taking on and experiencing what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And so also reading body language and tone as they're talking and noticing. But when I can actually feel it, then I could just cut them off and lean in and go, do you feel like really tight in your chest, like you want to cry, and it feels like you're just trying to say the right thing more than actually feeling what you're saying? And they would start to cry. Oh my God, yes, how did you know that? And it's because I'm just describing what I can feel. And so it made me good at it. And it gave me compassion, because if you're physically feeling what somebody else is feeling, If they're being a jerk, condescending, mean, manipulative, if you're actually feeling what they're feeling, the downside is you can have compassion for somebody who could potentially do you harm. And I kind of talk about the mouse getting the thorn out of the lion's paw in my book, because it's if you can feel somebody's pain under their abhorrent behavior, it can also make you, well, it made me feel like I wanted to get closer, and I made up this thing in my head that I could love the unlovable, and that maybe I could save people because I could love the unlovable people. I could still love them unconditionally through all of their bad or weird or narcissistic behavior, because I knew who they were at their core, because I was feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is then I just gave up all my stuff all the time. I would go on these paths of trying to heal somebody else and lose track of what I was doing. So you were talking about earlier, before we started the show, you were talking about having boundaries with staff and colleagues and coworkers and patients and clients, and that was something you were interested in or dealing with in your office, people needing to have healthy
Yeah,
boundaries with
and
colleagues.
yeah, and a lot of clients that I have, like business clients that I have, that they sort of get lost on their own agenda for running their business or growing their business. And what will happen is that they'll veer off their own agenda to, again, be making sure that their staff is okay, or being too sympathetic in terms of what's going on in their individual staff's life.
Mhm.
Everybody has something going on. And so my question, it's a two-part question.
Okay.
One is, I'm fascinated because what it is that you just articulated, and when you were working in your clinic with different individuals, and that you're um, sensing what it is that they're feeling or what's going on with them. And when that's happening, and I know this has happened to you because I think I'm reading between the lines of what it is that
Okay.
you're saying, is that what they're verbally telling you doesn't match with what it is that you're sensing that's going on. So
Exactly.
when you're kind of for lack of a better word, calling them on their crap. And so teach me and us listening about how, like, at first when you realized, like, holy crap, like, that's not what's going on with them, right? Because I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that from a nervous system perspective, when we're hearing something and it's like you're getting a sense of, well, that's not right. So when you were just learning that you had this skill, like, teach me about how you transitioned to really trust the feeling as opposed to what it is that they're saying.
Oh, well, I kind of born with it. That was always, it's not like I learned it or started to recognize it. It was something that was happening from the time I was 2 years old,
Oh.
because it started trying to manage my older sister, she was born with a bit of an anxiety problem. It's like she was afraid of the world. And so she would get incredibly stressed and incredibly scared. And she would be
Mm.
mean and awful in her behavior, but I could feel her fear. I could feel her fear coming up, and then I would start to try to make her laugh or distract her before it surfaced and she acted out. Because when she acted out, it got everybody in trouble. So that's how the strategy started. So I've been doing this my whole life, and what Scott was helping me to realize is that I was taking for granted, and this was also difficult because I couldn't figure out how I was running my clinic so efficiently, but I couldn't teach other people to do it. Like, I didn't know why they weren't just gleaning. And it was Scott that pointed out, Heather, you're an empath, you're feeling and knowing things that other people don't feel and know. So when Virginia Satir and doing the Satir model about leveling, giving somebody a safe place to level, is what I was most excited about. And then, but I had to discover how to kind of explain myself
Mhm.
without making people feel like their privacy was being violated. And
Yes.
also I had to teach other people how to get the same result. So the matching, pacing, and leading with neurolinguistics was the closest thing. And I'm like, you can feel it too if you just slow down, don't talk in your head, and just sit like they sit. And my favorite part, whenever I teach NLP, my very favorite thing to teach is having them face off with each other and mirror each other and silently realize that they can get what the other person is thinking about. They can sit there across from somebody who has a sad thought and actually start crying for that person without a single word being spoken. And so anybody can learn to do that. What I had to learn is that not everybody was doing it. So I was just taking for granted that everybody had the same experience I did because I never had experienced anything else. It's a consensus delusion. We all believe that whatever we're experiencing is what other people are experiencing.
That is a very good statement. So say that one more time, that
Uh,
last part.
Consensus delusion, delusional. Consensus delusion means that we are in the delusion believing that everyone thinks or feels the same way we do.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And
in your, well,
yes.
oh no, you're in Canada, but here it's funny because I can sit there just neutral and I have clients that will come in all day long. Some will come in promoting the left wing politics and they will just reveal everything and complain and say these terrible nasty things about the other side, and I'm just listening and I'm watching them and I'm watching their behaviors and how they're coming to their conclusions. So then I just address that, but I'm not addressing the content. And then before that chair is even cold, the next person sits down and rants and raves from the other side of the aisle, making all kinds of terrible statements and stuff. And I just address it the same way, but it's consensus delusion. They think because they like me that I must think the same way they do.
Yes, and I think a lot of people operate in that way, specifically if they're in different communities. So
Mhm.
like it's more, I think, if people just, oh, they're in the same community as I am, they must automatically think the same way that I do as well. So not only on an individual basis, but probably also with like communities or different
Oh,
things
for
like
sure.
that. So I actually have a list of questions. I don't normally
Okay.
write down questions for people, but I was like, okay, I need to write these down because I don't want to forget. Because, um, so, um, so what info do you get when you are becoming the person or becoming what they need? So um, you spoke about this just a little bit, but teach us like what information are you getting in terms of like the kinesthetic, or like, because I know some people they can actually sort of see it in their brain,
Mhm.
in their mind, or some people they actually feel it. Or like when you're shifting into being what the person needs, is it just sort of a magnetic thing that you're just, um, I don't know, this sounds like floating over into what you feel like that person needs? Like, are you cognitively thinking about it and then doing it, or you just go and do it? Oh, okay. So I'm
And
just,
I'm not
yeah.
even aware that it's
So,
happening. I just all of a sudden become that person. Like I feel their pain or their discomfort. I feel their energy level. Like, and it's not like I can't tell that it's not mine.
mhm.
So sitting with you, like just sitting with you, I can feel a youthfulness in my body that I know I don't normally feel.
Oh, oh,
Because like
that's
I
like
have
awesome. I love that. Well, thank
so
you.
so you're lighter and more flexible than I naturally am. And do you and there's a little bit of a tightness in your stomach, like you're a little bit of nervous or like you're not doing this the way you normally would or something, like you're being graded. You have a little bit of a I'm being graded feeling going on. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh, 100%. That does. Just because this is normally when I do a podcast, I don't like have written down questions because I'm generally going with the energy of it. But again, like I just said, I have specific things. I'm on a
Yeah.
mission. I'm on a mission
Yeah.
with you, Heather.
And but you're feeling it. Here, let me turn my camera. You're feeling it right here.
Yeah. And so
Like
people that
you've
are
got a
just,
tightness right in your diaphragm right now.
that is absolutely correct. So people that are just listening to this, Heather turned her camera around so that I can see more of her torso, and she placed her hand on more of like a solar plex place. And so, yes, that's absolutely where I'm feeling it, like for sure. And um, and the way that you describe that too, I want to point out the way that you describe things, I think is another layer for people um, to hone in on a skill too. So when you're matching and pacing, creating rapport, you're stepping into that person's model of the world. You're getting to know what it is that they're actually feeling. But the caveat about you is that the way that you articulate it to the person, like the way that you just described it to me, I think me personally, I do struggle with how I describe things to people. Because I'm hyper kinesthetic. For me, I
Mhm.
definitely use my body to describe things. Like
Oh,
when
yeah.
when I'm with clients, like I am all over the room. Like if I'm with like a freedom-minded client, I have to take them in like the biggest room in the clinic because I know I'm going to be either throwing balls at them, I'm going to be standing on chairs, I'm going to be moving all around the room because um, for me, I find it harder to use words. So even doing this podcast, as you can tell, people that aren't listening, or sorry, that are listening and not seeing, that my hands are all over the place. For me to, it's almost like I'm like
Yeah.
a conductor, like doing things. So I love the way. So teach us, like, did you have to um, kind of um, take a step back and decide verbally, or were you more kinesthetic first and then you learned how to word things in a certain way?
I'm also pretty kinesthetic and also all over my room. And it's great if you have them moving around the room too. Like,
Yes.
because
Oh yeah.
physiology trumps emotion. So it's really great to move somebody's body. But what I'm doing is just describing what I'm actually feeling. When you were asking about, so that was me empathizing with you and just feeling what you're feeling. I slip into becoming what they need in the same way, because all of a sudden now I'm trying to make this more comfortable for you because I could feel that in you. So that's how becoming what they need is it becomes this driver. Like, this is how I've always described it. It's like seeing a puppy running in the middle of the highway, where that heartache, and you just have to save the puppy. You have to save the puppy, and you're going to do whatever you can. And for somebody to say, leave it alone, we're late. No, we're not going to make it on time and let this, like, a child or puppy die in the road. You have to fix it. And then, but that empathy and that becoming what they need doesn't go away until it's fixed. And then when it's fixed, boom, I'm Heather again. And the problem is, if it took months or years to fix or raise that person up or get them out of their fear or toward their biggest desire, then I've lost all that time. Because, like you were saying, now I am living their life's dream instead of my own. And then when they're fixed and I pop out of it and I'm back in myself, then I'm like, whatever happened to that theater thing that I was working on, or that degree I was going to get? How did I end up withdrawing from school? Like, these are things that really happen. I was going to get my psych degree when I met my first husband, who was an incredible, lovely, loving, amazing man. And he was constantly being abused by his family. He was taken advantage of by his family significantly. And he was trying so hard and kept being knocked down. And I was chair of a theater. I was going for my psych degree. I was working at night and going to college during the day. I had all this going on. I had my whole 5-year plan set up. And then somehow it went away. And then when we divorced in 2005, after we divorced, all of a sudden I'm looking back over 10 years going, why didn't I get that degree? Why did I? So what caused me to do that? Like it didn't make sense to me as I looked at my life in hindsight. None of my decisions made sense. And that's what the damage of being an empath is if you become what somebody else needs or become that person, you do harm to your own life and your own relationships. If I get into the energy of somebody who is super critical,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to be critical. I'm not going to be myself. And that's why in the book I talk about this book is for empaths and those who love them. Like, bless you for your patience and your ability to see your spouse or lover or friend be completely stolen randomly. But I mean, there's good parts, but it does take boundaries, like you were talking about with your business. You have to have what helped me is becoming a hypnotist and applying this completely to a clinic. So now when I get that driven feeling, like trying to save a child from being hit by a car, if I get that feeling, it is scheduled in my office. They have paid for it. I see them 1 hour a week and we get them to the end road, and I can keep their outcome clearly in my mind because I've written it down from their free screening. So because I have the outcome that they desire, a well-formed outcome, as we say, then I can just keep focusing on that, and it allows me to be in my own body. But doing that outside of work and personal relationships is where the damage is, and it gets challenging. But I would recommend to your business clients
Mm-hmm.
that they realize that their business is first and foremost, and making just parameters. Like one very wise boss told me when I was very young, you can get nicer, but you can't get meaner. So if you start out all love and smiles with your employees and giving them extra rope and trust and respect, and then you find they're not doing their job, and then you have to like call them on the carpet,
Yep. Yeah.
then it's devastating. But if you start out not smiling, boundaries, this is your job, this is what you do, then you can little bits at a time drop things like your work was appreciated, well done. But you still have to keep that boundary, because
Mm-hmm.
once you go past that, Jeannie Laborde in influencing, it's so funny. It's like a commercial that I could turn around and just grab that book.
So she's holding up a book called Influencing with Integrity by Jeannie Laborde.
Yeah, and Jeannie Laborde has in here, there's two things. There's actual conversation about speaking with employees specifically and finding out if they're in the right job or if they need to leave the company. But sometimes just because somebody isn't doing their job doesn't necessarily mean you have to fire them. Sometimes it means you just have them in the wrong
Position.
venue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't hire an accountant to do a sales job.
Well, and it's interesting because a client of mine, there was like a very security-minded person in sales and a very freedom-minded person in accounting. And it wasn't like a publicly traded company. It was just a small to medium-sized company. And so when I saw that and switched their roles, oh my gosh, they were so much more confident. It was just the most interesting thing because I was even asking, like, how did this even happen? Like, how, you know? So my next question, can you give, you might have actually answered this. Can you give examples of being an empath? And yeah, so you already gave an example of that. See? So you are already answering questions that I already have on here. So that's awesome. So let's go to let's keep on the theme of boundaries. So
Okay.
what boundaries as an empath protects um protects you from yourselves from losing your identity? So how is it can you that you can really um create these boundaries? Like you just mentioned from like a business perspective that you're
Yeah.
creating them right at the front. So creating the boundaries of, you know, I don't want to use the word being mean, but like having high boundaries, the
Yeah.
beginning of an employee and owner relationship. But even talking as like a client as well. So whether it's an employee or a client. So what are other examples, even personal life actually? So you gave some experiences that you've had that you've just fallen into what somebody needs, or now you as a business owner, you have those boundaries that you are clear about their outcome and they're paying you, they're coming in. But on a, like even a personal level now, what kind of boundaries need to be put in place for people that are listening that feel that they're an empath as well?
I use a goal list, physical, financial, emotional, and spiritual goals. Make it a graph. So you've got the goal, the desired goal for your physical body, whether it's playing guitar, being able to juggle, lose 20 pounds, whatever your physical goal. Financial goal isn't necessarily how to make as much money, but what you're going to do with your money. Remodel, finish the roof on the car, go on a trip, buy a new car, ask for a promotion, whatever your financial goal. Emotional, the emotional state that you want. Everybody has good days and bad days, but the emotional state that you'd like to be in most of the time. And then your spiritual goal. This is my spiritual goal. I was I was built for and created for, and my whole heart is unconditionally loving people and helping them to get to they are where their greatest potential is. That's just been my goal since I was a little kid, and it didn't matter what job I was in, that's what I did. Whether I was a bank teller or a bartender or an office manager, I was compelled to help people live out their dreams or get the confidence to be able to do it. So that's my spiritual goal, but I make a goal list. I have it hanging right next to my computer in my office, and I just check it every day. And it's a great way to achieve your goal, but it also, just having that goal list with the date I want to achieve it by and the action plan that I'm going to do, helps to remind me of what's important to me. And I know when I've started becoming what somebody else needs, or that I've gotten into somebody else's energy, if I look at that goal list and I don't care about those goals. Like if
Mm,
they feel like something I could give or take, like, I just made that up to fill out the chart. Like if I have any of those feelings, then I
mm-hmm.
know I've gotten into somebody else's energy or become what somebody else needs.
So
And that way I can focus on it. And I have to literally tell myself, no, Heather, you were passionate about this. You wrote it down because it mattered. You were picturing this when you were in your own energy.
it's
And
more, oh, sorry, I just want to clarify. So it's more of like an energy thing for you. So you're checking in what you're feeling, and then are you also checking in with like the actions that you're taking towards those goals that you're written down? Like if there's lack of action, then you know that you're sort of sidetracked, or would you say it's more feeling or a mixture of both?
it's definitely a mixture of both, because if I stop taking the daily action toward the goal, it's because it's gone down on my priority list. But also when if I have to force myself to take those actions, when I know a week ago it was a fun thing to do. Like I have to keep reminding myself. And I'm also in time instead of through time person, like in
Oh, so
timelines.
so teach people about that, because people that listen, they may not. So just really quickly, not in so much
Okay.
detail, but just, yeah, teach people about that.
So the best way to know what you are is to instinctively know it. So you just ask somebody, point to your childhood and then point to old age. Some people will point to because if they're English speaking people or traditional, if you read right to left instead of like up and down Chinese, a lot of people in Western society will point to the left for past, because we read and we turn pages, like the back of the book is here, and then this is the future, right? The way we read. So they'll
Mhm.
point left or right for past and future. But then there are some people who point behind them for past and forward for future. Those are more Indian, not Native American, but from India. The Indian culture tends to be more in time rather than through time, like this. In time rather than through time. I'm trying to keep my fingers on the screen.
Yeah.
So because I am in time, I also have the challenge that whatever is happening in front of me is what I'm focused on. Once it's happened, it's kind of out of my awareness, but that also causes me to lose sight of my goal here. Because if this is my goal and now I'm just dealing with whatever's in front of me, it hides the goal.
Right.
From myself. So lists make a lot of difference, but I can tell when it's in time and when it's an empath strategy, because if it's in time, all I have to do is look at my goal and I get excited about it again. But if I look at the goal and I'm not excited, and the trigger, the only way I know is really the disinterest in my own hopes and dreams. I literally become bored with my own hopes and dreams, and all of my passion goes to the hopes and dreams of the person that I'm trying to save.
So would you say it's almost as if you have like two or maybe even three, four, five different timelines? Some of them aren't even yours, and that you have to make sure that your own timeline, your own agenda or goals, that you're staying on that track more.
Yes.
And you have to like, yeah, because it's even as you're saying that, like it's interesting. It's like I got a sense that sometimes there could be multiple ones of those depending on like what's happening. Have you ever felt, and this is actually not one that I wrote down, it's just something that's coming up. Have you ever felt, I don't think dizzy is the word, but sort of like just and even the word, see, this is me having a hard time in terms of words. So not maybe like not here or not in, not necessarily in time, but not in this time in terms of like just because there's so many layers and kinesthetic senses that you're getting, and even the people that are around you, depending on the amount of people that are around you, that you're picking up different things, and it turns into like a goulash, and you can't differentiate between what like what person it's coming from.
That only happens if I'm in a group of strangers and I can feel something. And it's usually pretty obvious, but I will hone it because that passion, it's like it's like a kid trying to walk across a highway where you're trying to save them. So it usually is, it's not a goulash of things. It's the person in the greatest need or experiencing the greatest pain. What I loved about the clinic, especially when I was in Raleigh, because I saw 32 people a day in Raleigh. So I had no time. I'd feel them, I'd say what I was feeling, and I'd give them the technique or the tool or the understanding that would get them there. And what was cool is I could feel if they got it, because I can feel their relief. But the beautiful part is then I go to the next room and now I'm all about that person, and then all about that person. And then when I went home, I was in my own body because I had shifted into so many different people's senses that none of them stuck on me. So the more clients I see in the day, the better I'm going to feel at the end of the day. And
Awesome.
but if I'm walking around in a mall or an airport or something and I start to feel an unusual pain or emotion that I know my body doesn't feel, like I knew it was you because you have more flexibility, youth, and stamina in your body. And it feels great. Like I would love to hang out with you all day just so I could feel this. Because I'm like, I remember when I
Feel
could
free
do
to
that.
take some. Yeah, take it. It's okay.
But when I'm in an airport or something where there's a big crowd of people, if somebody is in pretty bad need or in really deep darkness that they're going through, I'll feel it. And it's a yucky, helpless feeling if I can't find the person. But I was in an airport once and there was a veteran He was coming back from war. He had just landed in America, and he was getting on the leg that was going to take him home. And he was in incredible pain. And I noticed, I didn't hear what he was saying, but I noticed every time somebody sat next to him, in a few minutes, they'd get up and walk away, and there was nobody sitting in the chairs next to him. And I could just feel this terrible pain. And I walked up to him and I said, thank you for your service. I understand you're a soldier. Are you in a lot of shoulder pain? And he stood up and screamed, yeah, I was shot. Of course I'm in pain. Well, apparently he had been telling everybody that was sitting next to him how much pain he was in. That was why they were getting up and leaving. And so I did pain management hypnosis on him, more so that I wouldn't feel the pain, because I was feeling his and it hurt so bad that I had to fix it in him. So yeah, but you find it. And that was in an airport gate with probably 250 people filling all the gates, but I knew it was him.
That's awesome.
For some reason.
So, and the interesting thing that just overall in terms of that makes it easier for all change workers, hypnotists, anybody that has a job that's working with people, it's about really being comfortable with people. I think that's one of the biggest learnings for a lot of people in these industries. So for you and I, we could walk up to anybody, anytime, any place, any whatever, and there's no we just have full comfort in that. 100% full comfort to even sit beside somebody, to even touch them, to even and I think that's also an element. And I've never thought and I guess maybe this is what I got excited about and interested in, is that I do feel that I am an empath, and even the things that you're saying, I'm like, holy crap. Just in terms of even what you mentioned about your sister too, like I can really relate. And so I think that if anybody is trying to grow themselves and want to get towards utilizing this skill, is to create as much flexibility as you can in yourself when it comes to being completely okay with any human being, no matter what.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an energetic comfort too. Like it's not just talking, it's like a letting, like in terms of energy, people have different sort of energy bubbles, right? And like there's this guy in my BNI group, and he is a close talker. And yeah, and it's interesting because you see people, they'll like back away. For me, I'm like, whatever, man. Okay, like part of me is just like maybe he needs to see, or because he is this individual, he is also kinesthetic. So I get a sense that he has no clue, but that he needs to when he's talking to somebody, he feels safe to be closer, right? So it's interesting and that's what I love about what it is that we do as hypnotists. And I love the word change workers. It's a beautiful way to say what it is that we do. Okay, next question, because I know I'm taking up a ton of your time. We're like, and I have two more. Okay, so what do you think is the biggest penalty for people that cannot feel what people are feeling? So this sort of piggybacks on what we were just talking about, of people that are in this business. Like, what do you feel is the biggest penalty that holds them back when they're not actually trying to build this skill within themselves?
Oh, well, first of all, if you're not empathizing, even just traditionally not being, I'm not talking about being an empath. If you're not empathizing with people to seek understanding, you're going to end up the downside is you're going to step on people's toes. You're going to do harm without realizing you're doing harm. It's the reason sociopaths and people with mental illness that can't feel emotion, it's the reason that they don't function well in society, because like Sheldon on Big Bang, you're walking around just saying things matter-of-factly, not understanding why people are offended that you said, blurted out something that would be incredibly insulting, or they're just stepping on people's toes. And they may innocently be trying to just do what it takes to get to their goals, but they're making themselves look like a monster to other people.
Mm.
I hypnotized almost all of Daniel's elementary when I was in Raleigh. It was all of these teachers, and they kept referring more teachers, and I had just a slew of these elementary school teachers, and they had a principal that was just, they would cry. Like the first lady that came in that ended up referring everybody said if she had to talk to the principal, she would be so devastated that quite often she'd have to get a substitute for the rest of the day because she couldn't stop crying and she was so upset.
Wow.
And she lost weight and did all kinds of stuff and got over, she had a fear of math, and she had to expand her teaching certification to teach math. And but what caused all those people to come in is it's not that they noticed her weight loss and her confidence. They noticed that when she was talking to the principal, she'd come right back and go, yeah, so she said, I'm just going to do it this way. Or, what she was asking was, and she would go right back to her office, and it would be like water off a duck's back. And they were like, what have you done? Because they're like standing around with candy and everything going, okay, when she comes out, she's going to be really upset, and we're all going to love on her and tell her how great she is. And we're going to give her sugar and like her favorite Frappuccino, and she came out and was like, what? I'm fine. And they were like, you're never fine. Well, turns out all of the teachers were having the same experience. And just by a weird act of God is the only thing, that principal ended up showing up for a free screening. And I was like, interesting. When I saw her name and what she did, I was like, so how did you find out about me? Because I'm like, which one of the teachers was bold enough to actually get her to come in, like to recommend it, and like, because that would have been a particular skill to get this woman to come in for a free screening to change something. And she goes, oh, I saw a commercial, and I realized that she needed to understand why people weren't doing what they were told. She wanted to learn communication because she couldn't figure out why she was telling these people what to do and they just weren't doing it. And so I had to teach her about human emotion. She literally had no emotion. She just thought very straightforward. She didn't empathize with anybody at all. She was like, I have a job to do. This is the list. This is the strategy. I'm just going to tell them and they need to do it. Except that she could not take into consideration what it would be for them to have to do it, or what was already on their plate, or the stress that they were going through, not in their personal life, but just in their own job. And so she was seeing people like they were machines. And it was all new to her. It was like I was showing her a new color in the rainbow. And she was like, they have those feelings? I'm like, how did this woman get all the way in her career to become the principal of a school? But it was
female Sheldon.
She was absolutely like Sheldon. And it was a challenge, but that is the result. She made everybody cry. Nobody wanted to be around her. And if you can't empathize, you're just going to do harm, even if you don't know you're doing it, even if it's not your intention. You're going to walk around doing harm if you're not considering the other side of the coin in interacting with people.
And so give us an example in terms of personal relationships. So that was more for work. And so what about so again, the question is what do you think is the biggest penalty for people that cannot feel what people are feeling in like a personal relationship, and how it can affect whether it's like mother-daughter, husband-wife, best friends, business partners, different things like that?
A lot of people, almost all women in marriage, start to feel, well, if you're self-sorted, if you're thinking about what you're getting, what you're wanting, what you're expecting, then you're automatically not empathizing. You're not sorting by other people. And the problem is when you're not getting what you want and you're focused on what you're not getting, you're not understanding what the other person is experiencing. And then when you talk in your head and you make up what they might be experiencing, like my famous one was, he just wants a housekeeper, he doesn't really love me. That was my exit strategy. And I would be so into it that I felt I would go into this feeling of being put upon or unappreciated, not loved, when really the truth was I had become so critical. Critical's harsh, but I had become so protocol about how I kept the house and what the routine was going to be and the level of cleanliness and the schedule of the day, that I did not realize I wasn't leaving any room for somebody to help me or offer anything. And then people started making up in their head, well, she must just like to clean, so it's okay if I leave a mess for her because she likes cleaning it up. But I wasn't empathizing with them and realizing while I was cleaning up after them, I was actually moving the stuff that they needed to be able to find. Their security came from having their stuff all over the place, and a clean place made them feel like they were in a museum and uncomfortable. And that's why I love the satir model, because doing the satir model formally, just running through the blame, placate, compute, distract, and then asking, how do you want this to go, without doing that? If you sit down and really level with yourself first and then level with the other person, this is what I was expecting, this is what I was thinking, but I was wondering, what are you thinking and expecting? And it's amazing how it works if you've really leveled with yourself first, because it's a formal way to find out what the other person is experiencing if you're not getting it. So not only is it important to empathize with another person, because you can just as easily do harm to them, you can also feel harmed when you're not being. You can feel taken for granted, put upon, unloved, when that's not true at all, where your behavior is causing them to just respond in the only way they know how.
That is amazing. And I hope everybody listens to this podcast at least twice, because there are so many amazing nuggets and information. And yes, I'm like, thank you so much for all of this information. I do actually have one more quick question, and I know we only have a couple more minutes. So, okay. So, how do you teach empaths to grow, and how do you teach people to be more empathetic? Like, so you were describing with the teacher and things like that, like, and you taught a little bit of how it is that you taught her just by letting her know that you can be empathetic, or that you can, or giving her the insight of that she can, like, there was this other layer of humans, right? Teaching them about emotion. So I think you already answered that, but how can you help empaths grow? Or maybe we answered that with creating the boundaries. Or what advice, what would you say to
Create a goal list. So when I wrote, let's see if I have that one. There it is. When I wrote,
so she's holding up her own book. I love it.
When I wrote A Dedicated Life, an Empath's Journey, I actually flew to Ireland, and I stayed in Airbnbs way out in the country, like on farms and in castle ruins and stuff like that. And I would just write in coffee houses and pubs, and I would write until my hand cramped. But I spent a week in Ireland so that I was away from any energy. And Ireland is an island surrounded by massive water. So bodies of water and forestry has enough frequency and energy. The ocean, there's nothing better than standing on the shore of an ocean when there's nobody around. But it's the power of nature. A high enough frequency of nature will wipe you clean.
Love it.
And so if you get into, so an empath needs to get into their own energy and know they're in their own energy, and then write down what they know they want, how they want their life to go, and then just keep checking in with it. make yourself check in with it every day and believe yourself, even if you have to make a little mantra. I know this is what I want, and if I'm not feeling it, it's because I'm lost in somebody else's wants or needs.
I love it. 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 In terms of the nature, um, for me, it's more forest growth. Like
Yeah.
our house, we back onto a whole bunch of green space. Um, Even if I turn the camera, you'd see like this big, massive tree.
Yeah.
That's like, ironically, that's my name, but
Okay.
but that's um, so I think for people listening to this, that find what fills you with energy, find what calms your energy, that allows you to disconnect, whether it's water, whether it's the earth, whether it's the forest, and all of those things. And I encourage you to actually listen to this twice and to buy Heather's book, A Dedicated Life. Will have all of the links for Heather, her book, to buy it. Everything, will have all of it in the show notes. So thank you so much, Heather. This is very transformational. And I know that everybody listening to this is getting all of even what I'm getting out of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
Well, folks, that's a wrap for today's episode of The Root of It All with Tree. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But before we go, I just wanted to remind you that you can follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram. And we will be posting motivational quotes and behind the scenes content that you won't want to miss. You can always sign up to come live while we're filming this, or even join us online through Zoom. We always offer open question and answer after each episode that we don't record, so it's all private, but you can get more involved. So sign up for free at businessgrowthresults.com, and we're going to cover all kinds of different topics that you're not going to want to miss. And if you're looking for that one-on-one guidance or help, be sure to book a free screening. You can do that at burlingtonhypnosis.ca or call 905-634-4777. And finally, you can catch our podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.